Hello and welcome to episode 16 of my trip down memory lane back to the Pacific Crest Trail and my Thru-hike exactly 10 years ago. I returned yesterday from another Thru-hike, namely the GR11, a truly fantastic trail here in Europe that stretches across the entire Pyrenees mountain range from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean Ocean, or vice versa. It mainly runs through Spain, but also through Andorra and sometimes a tiny bit of France. And I have to say, I got a lot of PCT memories, a lot of PCT flashbacks on this trail. And if you want to know what I experienced there, then you definitely need to subscribe to the channel because I think I've collected about 7 hours of video footage. So there will be a lot about this spectacular trail on my channel. But today we're still in this series of the Pacific Crest Trail, and it's still exactly 10 years since I was there. And yeah, we're now in mid-August, and in this episode, a very short episode because it was only a very short distance, we reach the first really gigantic milestone. We've already reached a few milestones like 100 miles, 200 miles, 1,000 miles, and half-way marker and so on. But now for the first time of the hike, we are reaching a new state. And that was really an incredible achievement because California is a gigantic, a huge state. And we go right in and see what we experienced that day. We were last in Seiad Valley, where we treated ourselves not to the pancake challenge at the cafe, but to a delicious omelette and a hot chocolate. And afterwards, we sat outside with other hikers and just enjoyed the moment. And a deer came by, ate some blackberries. A hiker opened her resupply box and handed out cookies baked by her grandmother. It was really lovely and yeah, just a nice time. But at some times, we headed back onto the trail. And after a short time, this helicopter here appeared. It landed right near me and it was really cool to watch. It was very large. And I thought, oh shit, someone's in trouble. That's not cool at all. But then out of nowhere, out of the bushes, suddenly appeared, I don't know how many, but quite a few completely filthy firefighters full of ash emerged from the bushes. And that helicopter came to pick them up. They were apparently done with their work, I don't know, fighting a fire and then probably put it out because there was no fire to be seen. And yep, they were picked up again. And I thought that was pretty cool to watch. It was also cool to see the guys who really make sure that we can hike there and that the whole natural environment doesn't just burn down. And I'm very grateful for their work.
Ob man's glaubt oder nicht.
Believe it or not, these are the last few meters of California.
Ich bin jetzt eine Meile vor der
I'm now a mile from the Oregon border.
Woohoo! Endlich raus aus Kalifornien.
Finally out of California. I mean, it was nice, but all the other hikers and we are just happy that we're finally somewhere else.
Und man hat dann doch auch das Gefühl, endlich mal was erreicht zu haben.
And then you finally feel like you've achieved something, you know? California is an incredibly huge state and now we're almost out of it.
Woohoo!
Yeah, I remember exactly what it was like in the last few miles in California. Of course, in the days leading up to it, you always knew that, yeah, it's almost time. We are going to reach Oregon very soon. We're entering a new state and that will somehow change things. There's different vegetation, different landscape in general. It's also called the pancake state, which means it's very flat. We were looking forward to that too because, we've been through some high mountains in California. But in retrospect, I didn't necessarily find this part of the trail to be less mountainous or noticeably flat. I don't know. Maybe the rest of the state is flat, but on the PCT I didn't notice a lot of difference. But it was just, you had the feeling, wow, now you've really achieved something. Now you're entering a new state. And then it's somehow also not far from Canada anymore. It's only like 400 miles or so to the Washington border from the Oregon border. And that was a distance that we could cover pretty quickly. So the final destination of Canada felt more tangible somehow. when we were in California, it was still like, well, there's California and California and California, then at some point Oregon, and then Washington. And now it was just like, we came to Oregon and somehow knew, okay, in 3 or 4 weeks or something like that, we'll be in Washington, and then that's actually Canada after that. And that was really crazy. And then actually arriving at the border, that triggered all kinds of feelings. Pride, of course, but also curiosity and a certain melancholy, because we knew that California was now behind us and that we are now slowly approaching our final miles on the trail, even though there are still 962 miles to go. Yeah, that's still an incredible distance, but for a PCT hiker, that's somehow just a number that doesn't seem to be very big anymore. So I was wrong. It's 500 miles to the Washington border from the Oregon border. And I don't know how long it took us to get through Oregon. I think about 4 weeks or so. But as I just said, there were more tangible goals now, big goals that we had ahead of us. So Washington border was very close. And then the Canadian border was also very close. It's just about 460 more miles. And that's not much when you've already hiked 1,000 miles or 2,000 miles. Somehow it was really cool to be standing there in Oregon on the Californian border, because you knew that you had already completed the biggest part of the journey. You had already completed the biggest and possibly the hardest part. And what else could happen now? What else could happen? What could possibly prevent me from completing this journey? I'm sure many people who reached this point thought the same thing. And in the end, many of them were unfortunately unable to finish the trail due to fires in 2015. And we were incredibly lucky. We arrived in Oregon, and there were already several wildfires burning on the trail in Washington and Oregon. And while we were hiking through Oregon, we missed out on a lot of the views because of smoke from Oregon fires, and also smoke that was blown down from fires in Washington. And at some point, it suddenly became clear that Washington state was on fire, and the whole state was burning somehow. And many hikers we knew, and also many we didn't know, but were in contact with via the internet, via Facebook, had to interrupt or relocate their hike and end somewhere else, because the entire state of Washington was burning. And there are a lot of people who end up in Washington in August and maybe for 2 weeks in September, and then they finish the trail. However, we were a little behind schedule, and that ultimately saved our asses. We come back to that in a later episode, but we finished mid-October, and because of that, we were able to hike the rest of the trail. But I guess many people who had the same thoughts that I had on the Oregon border, nothing is gonna stop me now, actually got disappointed and actually got stopped. But I was very happy at the border.
Welcome to Oregon. Da sind wir endlich.
We're finally here. Washington border 498. Canadian border 962.
So, mit einem Fuß in Oregon, mit dem anderen in Kalifornien.
With one foot in Oregon, the other foot in California.
Tja, das war's mit Kalifornien.
Well, that's it for California.
Ui.
Wow, so many books here.
Books here. Oh, das sieht man.
Wow, that looks nice. Now you can see that on the camera. It's a 3D effect. Yes, it was always very nice to read in these registers who had already been there and who was still on the way. Back then, there weren't really any, messenger groups that we were all staying in contact. Everything was pretty analog at that time. And so the registers were basically our source of information about other hikers. And it was very nice to see that when you saw a name of a hiker you know, but you haven't seen in a while to see, hey, that person is still on the trail, hadn't given up yet, and we might just be a day behind. So let's catch up with that person, or meet the person in the next town, or so on. And it was always very nice to see familiar names and to see, how everyone else who you got close to is progressing. I can still remember very well where we camped the next night. So it was our first night in Oregon, and it was very close to the border. We just pitched our tent with a few other hikers at the bend of a gravel road, and we just camped there, and it was kind of cool. So we were all celebrating our first night in Oregon now. And the next day, we continued walking, and Oregon immediately presented us with some amazing views before we got to the point where we couldn't see as much because of the smoke. And but the first days in Oregon were awesome. And we also reached the 700-mile mark. Yeah, by then it was just another marker, as I said before, but it was still pretty cool, of course. And that was nice too. It was, I think, the night after that or something, we camped here on the other side of this ridge, and it should be somewhere around here if you enlarge this photo where we camped. And up there we discovered this outhouse with a view. Not really a house, but that was basically the view from there, and it was pretty funny, of course. And I have no idea who built it there or why, but of course we all enjoyed using it. It was definitely a pretty funny way of taking a shit, I'd say. Yeah, and then we went down to the highway. As you can see, we were quite a large group. There were quite a few people there, and we got to the highway and waited until someone picked us up. We hitchhiked to Ashland, which is the largest city after the Oregon border, the next largest city. And I think it was quite a ride. It was not super close. I don't remember exactly. So we drove north on the highway. But Ashland is a town where all hikers stop because you have to resupply there. And you can see all the boxes here again. Oregon, I think, is worse for resupplying than Northern California. There are options, but they are very small shops and where you can only get the basics and quite pricey. And I think we packed resupply boxes for the entire state of Oregon in Ashland. So here you can see all the boxes, and we've packed quite a lot. I'm not sure if... I think it was for all of Oregon. And I think we sent resupply boxes almost exclusively from Northern California going north. So NorCal, Oregon, and Washington, which wasn't always necessary, but it was simply more worthwhile for us financially and in terms of options available. Here you can see a nice picture from a hotel room. So I guess it was a guy called Platypus, who I was talking to, and I told him that we are going to stealth camp in Ashland. We were staying with a couch surfer for 2 nights, but we didn't have an option for the 3rd night, so we just planned to stealth camp somewhere. And he said, "Hey, I've got a motel room. Just join us." And there were already quite a lot of hikers there, and of course we definitely took that, and it was very nice, and we could stay there in a hotel, and we could take a shower and everything. And the next day we went to the breakfast, and that was just a really nice thing to experience. It was a trail magic by another hiker. I really liked Ashland itself. It's a bit of a hippie town. There are many alternative people there, and there's a lot of culture. There was a music festival going on at the time, free of charge, with live music every night, and that was really, really nice. As a musician myself and a music lover, I really missed that, and it was just lovely to sit there with friends and listen to the music and stuff. And of course, we ate a ton, as always. I remember this Oreo cake very well. We got it at the supermarket and devoured it right outside of the supermarket in the parking lot. Just the 2 of us. And of course, that was a bit extreme. But, you have to get those calories in somehow. I've lost 8 kilos about, I would assume, on my Thruhike on the GR11, like in the last 5 weeks. So I don't know how much weight I lost on a PCT. Maybe it wasn't even that much, but the shape, you lose the fat and you build muscle, so weight-wise, it probably equals out, but you burn so much more calories than you can bring on the trail, and an Oreo cake probably has a few thousand calories, or a pizza like this one, and so we just took those calories back in Ashland, which was very nice. It was definitely one of my favorite trail towns. The food was really good there in general. There was a real bakery with sourdough bread and stuff, and I have to say, after 4 months on the trail, at some point I couldn't really stand all the sticky white bread anymore. Tortillas were always okay, but yeah, I just missed some real bread, and it was very nice to have it in Ashland from a real bakery. And we definitely had a really good time there. Ate delicious food, soaked up culture and people, and it was the perfect start for our time in Oregon. And on the third day, I think we headed back out to the trail, but we'll get to that in the next episode, our first real Oregon episode. And yeah, as always, if you have any questions or suggestions, or if you hike the trail yourself and want to share your experience, feel free to write them in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the GR11 if you're interested in that. It's an amazing trail. I would say it's the European John Muir Trail, and I was completely surprised by the spectacular landscape I hiked through, and I'm still completely blown away. I've never experienced that we had something like this in Europe. Somehow I hadn't considered Spain as a great hiking territory at all, but I was very wrong. It was really spectacular. And I'll tell you exactly how I ended up hiking there at some point, but I can already tell you that what I have to show you is absolutely amazing. So please subscribe to the channel, and until then, all the best and see you soon.